Kicked out of home at 17, I made my own life. See how I changed everything. I never thought my life could change so drastically in a single instant. Until that day, I believed my home was a safe place, that my family supported me, even though I sometimes felt a rift between me and my brother Nathan. I was 17, attending public school, and in my free time, I helped my father with small chores and took care of the house, even with all the responsibilities that didn't normally weigh on me. Life wasn't perfect, but I had a routine, friends, and dreams that seemed attainable. I believed my honesty and dedication would be recognized someday. But in that instant, everything changed. It was a car accident, something that seemed ordinary, but it revealed the true colors of my family. Nathan had caused the accident as always, without thinking about the consequences. And when everything came to light, my father and mother looked at me with disapproval and demanded that I take the blame. I couldn't refuse. The fear, the pressure, and the feeling of being invisible in that home made me give in. I took it all on myself, and in return, I lost my home, my comfort, and above all, my family. I walked out the front door with only $12 in my pocket and a bag of clothes that barely covered my basic needs. In that moment, I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. The first few hours on the streets were confusing and terrifying. Every step reminded me that I had no one to turn to. I wondered how the people who were supposed to protect me could simply throw me out and turn their backs. The streets seemed endless, and around every corner, a new challenge presented itself. I needed to find food, shelter, and a way to survive without anyone knowing I was completely alone. The feeling of abandonment was overwhelming, and despair hit me hard the first night I spent without a safe roof over my head. I tried to cry, but realized that tears wouldn't give me food or safety. Getting small jobs was harder than I imagined. I spent days walking the city streets, offering help, carrying bags, cleaning houses, anything that paid a few bucks. I felt shame, fear, and a deep loneliness. Every time someone asked about my family or my life, I felt the weight of the lie I had to maintain to survive. Working from dawn to dusk and still having to study seemed impossible, but I knew that if I stopped, I would never have the chance to change my life. I needed to prove myself to myself and, one day, to those who underestimated me. For months, the routine consumed me. Waking up early, working, studying at night, saving every penny, it all felt like a constant battle against the world. I lived in cheap hostels, the occasional friend's house, and sometimes slept on park benches. The feeling of cold and insecurity lingered, but there was a flame within me that refused to go out. I began to learn to manage every penny, to plan every step, and to see opportunities even when everything seemed dark. It was during this period that I realized that my life didn't need to be defined by abandonment or Nathan's lies, but by my own effort and courage to keep going. Amidst this chaos, my mind was a constant whirlwind. I remembered how my mother, Laura, had never defended me, always trying to justify Nathan's actions, and how my father, Emmanuel, had seen me as just the extra, someone who could be discarded without remorse. Each memory stung like a hot iron, but it also reminded me why I needed to move forward. It wasn't just for myself. It was to prove that my life had value, that I was capable of building something solid and worthy, despite all the contempt I'd suffered. Sometimes I wished I could scream, cry, simply feel anger without fear, but in practice, I had to stay calm and keep moving, because any slip-up could cost me opportunities or security. I began reaching out to people who, even strangers, offered some kind of support. Friends I met through temporary jobs, supportive neighbors, and even people who simply gave me information about jobs and safe places. Every gesture, no matter how small, represented a thread of hope that stretched through the void my family had left. In those moments, I realized the power of empathy and human solidarity. I learned that even when you feel alone, there's always someone willing to lend a hand, and these small gifts kept me going through cold nights without enough food. At the same time, I needed to study. My education was the key to something bigger. Between jobs, I found time for borrowed books, online studies, and improvised notes. Every concept I learned, every small academic achievement, reminded me that my mind and dedication were my most powerful weapons. It was during this phase that I began to develop a sense of planning and vision for the future. I imagined a different life, without Nathan's shadow or my parents' neglect. And even though the journey was slow and painful, I realized I was building something no one could take away from me: my independence and self-esteem. The challenges, however, continued to arise. There were times when I considered giving up completely, when physical and emotional exhaustion overwhelmed me. The cold, hunger, and feelings of rejection were almost unbearable. I remember one night, sitting on a park bench, crying silently, feeling that all my efforts were in vain. It was at that point that I realized that overcoming obstacles didn't come from miracles, but from small daily decisions. Getting up, pursuing something, continuing even when it seemed impossible. The strength I needed was within me, and accepting this was the turning point that changed my perspective. Over time, I managed to save enough money for a small rent and consistent food. Each step felt slow but solid. I felt like I was finally taking control of my life out of my family's hands and placing it in my own. I began to plan a future where I wouldn't depend on anyone, where my worth wouldn't be defined by Nathan or my parents' opinions or lies. This rebuilding process was painful, but also liberating. With each day, I felt my confidence grow, my courage strengthen, and my desire to prove myself to the world intensify. After months of living like this, I began to notice significant changes in myself. The fear still lingered, but now it was tempered with courage. The feeling of being invisible to my family began to fade in the face of what I was, building with my own hands. I landed a more stable job at a small local company, where my hard work and dedication were quickly recognized. For the first time, I felt my abilities had concrete value, something that couldn't be ignored or manipulated by Nathan. Each small success reminded me that I wasn't just a leftover or an extra, as my father used to call me. It was during this phase that I realized I needed to go beyond survival. I wanted to thrive. I began planning to open my own business, something that would give me complete independence. I studied finance, marketing, and management, often until the early hours of the morning, between work and restless rest. There were days when exhaustion made me question whether all the effort was worth it. But something inside me, perhaps the need to prove I could overcome anything, drove me to keep going. Every challenge I faced, from difficult clients to complicated bureaucracy, became a training ground in patience, resilience, and strategy. While my personal and professional growth progressed, my family remained distant. Nathan, of course, continued with his life, believing I had no chance of achieving anything significant. My mother remained passive, my father as cold as ever. This reality strengthened me even more because I realized that my motivation needed to come from within, not from their recognition. It was a constant exercise in self-improvement. With each achievement, I felt I was not only building my life, but also repairing the wound they had inflicted, showing that my existence had value regardless of their opinions. There came a point where my business began to bear fruit. I was able to rent my own space, hired my first employee, and began gaining visibility in the community. The sense of accomplishment was indescribable. Everything that had seemed impossible when I was homeless, with $12 in my pocket, now materialized before me. Every effort, every tear, and every sleepless night had been worth it. I was proving, first and foremost to myself, that I was capable of facing any adversity and still thriving. But the most profound victory wasn't just financial. With each step, my confidence and self-esteem grew. I began to realize that my emotional wounds were healing. Although the pain of abandonment never completely disappeared, I learned to cope with it and transform it into strength. I felt more complete, more autonomous, and more alive than ever. And it was at this moment, already consolidating my own independence, that I began to realize that the time was approaching to confront my family, not for revenge, but to set boundaries and demand accountability, something they had never done for me. The moment of confrontation with my family arrived unexpectedly. Nathan, realizing I had achieved financial and emotional stability he never imagined, tried to reconnect with me with empty excuses and attempts at manipulation. My mother, Laura, appeared, trying to justify the past and assuage her own guilt, while my father, Emmanuel, remained cold and distant, as if nothing had mattered. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and relief. Finally, I could show them I was no longer the vulnerable girl they had driven from home. I was ready, not to apologize, but to assert my boundaries and assert my worth. During the confrontation, I stood firm. I demonstrated all my achievements, explained each step of my journey, and, most importantly, revealed that all my strength came from overcoming their abandonment. Nathan was visibly irritated, trying to dismiss my words and minimize my achievements. But I didn't back down. For the first time, I realized I didn't need their approval to validate my existence. My confidence came from what I had built, from the tangible proof that my life had value. It was a liberating moment, as I realized I could face my past without fear and transform pain into learning. The presence of Alyssa, Nathan's wife, was an emotional turning point in this confrontation. She had witnessed the true nature of Nathan and his family and decided to break with the manipulation, publicly supporting me and protecting her own son. Her courage inspired me, and together we showed that the truth carried more weight than lies or false family privilege. It was the first time I felt a genuine sense of justice, not just for myself, but for those who, silently, also suffered because of Nathan's actions. After this confrontation, I noticed a shift in the family dynamic. Some uncles, aunts, and cousins began to reflect on their past actions and recognized my achievements. Some apologized, others remained skeptical, but everyone had to acknowledge that I had become someone of value, someone who had survived rejection and thrived. The feeling of finally being seen and respected, even if only partially, brought an unexpected peace. For the first time in years, I felt my voice carried weight and that my actions could inspire respect, not just fear or ignorance. The most significant recognition came from my grandmother, who always believed in me even when the rest of the family doubted. She supported me, recorded my story, and, upon her death, left me the house and inheritance that symbolized not only a material possession, but also the validation of all my struggle. Receiving this was one of the most moving moments of my life. The feeling of justice, love, and reparation gave me the certainty that, despite all the suffering, my life had found balance. Finally, I could breathe without fear, knowing that my journey of overcoming was recognized and respected. Today, looking back, I can clearly see every moment that shaped me. The cold nights on the streets, the hunger, the loneliness, and the despair were not just obstacles, but lessons that taught me the importance of resilience and self-sufficiency. Every tear shed and every step taken made me stronger and more aware that my life didn't need to be defined by the contempt of those who claim to love me. I discovered that my true family, often, isn't those who share my blood, but those who offer support, love, and courage when we need it most. I've learned to value my achievements, no matter how small they seem. Every penny saved, every task completed with effort, and every victory achieved in my journey of study and entrepreneurship represent more than material success. They represent my ability to rebuild and reinvent myself in the face of adversity. Today, I know I can face any challenge because I've already overcome the impossible. The pain of the past still lingers, but it doesn't paralyze me. It has become motivation to continue growing and helping others who also feel abandoned or undervalued. My relationship with my family will never be perfect, and not everyone has completely reconciled with me. Some still remain skeptical or distant, and that's okay. I've learned that true value lies in knowing when to fight, when to forgive, and when to simply move on without relying on others' validation. My story isn't just about revenge, but about resilience, self-determination, and the ability to transform suffering into something positive. I'm living proof that it's possible to rise again even when all seems lost. Today, I introduce myself to you. My name is Clara. The story I share happened when I was 17, a time when I should have been experiencing youthful experiences with protection and support, but which instead became the beginning of my greatest journey of overcoming obstacles. Today, as a young adult, entrepreneur, and master of my own story, I share this with you because I want you to understand that no matter how deep the abyss you've fallen into, it's possible to find strength within yourself and rebuild your life, brick by brick. This journey taught me something essential. That pain, no matter how intense, can never define who you are. What defines us are the choices we make in the face of it, the courage to continue, the belief that we deserve more, and the ability to transform wounds into fuel for growth. Life has taught me that every tear, every challenge, and every defeat has a purpose when we are able to get up and walk with determination. Today, I can say that I survived, grew, and thrived, and that my story is mine, completely mine, and that is a victory no one can take away.